think that means we're on.
Again?
Again! This is our fourth
Really?
episode.
Is their mic working?
Is your mic working? I think we did this beforehand. So we just jump right in.
All right.
So this is our fourth episode of our second season of Live at 5. So far this season we've covered the jump shops, the Graveyard Point plume agate mining operation. They're right here. The second one was of Dale Hewitt and the rock that he brought to the market and is still continuing to mine today. The third episode was Larry Ridley of Willow Creek and the wonderful thunderakes he's breaking open and bringing route to market. There are wonderful videos of these mining operations available on our YouTube station. If you haven't had a chance to check those out, those are there, as well as 2 new ones this week. Because this
presentation features the rocks mined by my best friend, Jake Daryl Jacobitz. Daryl Jacobitz is his real name. Everyone knows him as Jake. Jake mined the Biggs Jasper, Bruno Jasper, the Rocky Butte Jasper, and Morrisite, along with a few others. These are some of the most well-known and popular jaspers in the lapidary world. And we will talk about those today. But first, we have to look at the boxes.
We have to look at these boxes. Those of you who have joined us before know all about these boxes. Item numbers 0 through 123, because I added a 0 at the last minute. So those 124 items, each number is in here. That number when we get to it. And the first person to text that number gets that item half off.
And the price range?
Price range is $30 to $800. Number 3. There we go. 3. You didn't turn off your phone. This next box, everyone who commented last week on our feed, your name got placed in this box. The name that Jean picks, that person will get a 20% off coupon tonight. Who is the lucky winner? I know there's a lot of you who have been wishing for this because you guys have been watching every week. I do.
You do?
Yeah. Zach, you are our lucky customer. Thanks for being our customer. You get 20% off tonight on anything you choose to purchase. Those are the boxes. We can jump right in. Let's start.
Okay.
We've got a lot to cover tonight.
We are going to go over here
to our location maps.
Location maps first.
So going along that side. This one?
Check his mic. And pointer and talk about Biggs Jasper first. Biggs Jasper is found in the valley just north of Biggs Junction, Oregon. So on this satellite photo, you can see the Columbia River, and this is Oregon, and that's Washington, and this is Biggs Junction, and there is a river valley that runs in here, and the Biggs Jasper is found along the highway in this valley. You must make note that the Deschutes River is over here. The Deschutes Jasper is very similar to the Biggs, and sometimes most people can't tell the difference, but those people who know the rocks can tell the difference easily. And after it was discovered in this valley, it's also been dug outside the valley in a couple of places as well. This is a little close-up of this area here, and you can see the highway, and from about, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile to 1.5 miles up here, the Jasper was dug along the side of the road. The original...
Hold on. As we're starting numbers, just a reminder of how this works. Then I will show the number and the price, and then we will do a close-up of the item. If you are interested in purchasing that item, simply comment that number in the feed live. The first person to comment that number will be the winner of that item. We will be looking and reviewing all of the comments after the show in real time and message you through Facebook to let you know if you won anything.
The Biggs Jasper was Jake's first dig. Little background. Jake was actually from Wisconsin. He was born in central Wisconsin and grew up on a dairy farm. He had to, when he was in high school, he had to go work on a neighboring farm and milk cows before he went to school. And that was the beginning of his life. When he got out of high school, he went into the Army. And when he got out of the Army, he worked his way out west and started, he actually had equipment training in the Army, and he was working on building roads and putting in gates and things along the power line. And he was, it was in November sometime, I believe. They had a very, very wet November in Oregon, and the company doing all this construction work had to stop because it was so wet and so muddy. So, and he didn't know what to do with himself for a little while. So, who was it? I can't remember. Told him about
Hoot.
Hoot. It was Hoot Elkins. Yes, told him about this jasper that you could go dig along the side of the road, and so he went over there and started digging. He dug in the side of the road, wasn't finding anything, and then all of a sudden he hit it and had a whole truckload of it, and he sold the truckload, and that started him mining. He never went back to work for anybody else after that. There are several different kinds of Biggs jasper in the market. The very first jasper that was dug in the road cut, and I believe there's a big flood that came through there, and that's how they started finding it, is called Blue Biggs, and it has a bluish tinge in the hill structure of the jasper. I think that's a piece right there.
This is a piece of the Blue Biggs.
And I think there's 2 or 3 other pieces that are the old Blue Biggs. Yeah, that
Number
one.
4 and 0.
The rest of this material is either later dug material or material that was dug somewhere a little ways away. This information, I think Veronica mentioned, is available on a video that we've produced, which is a sort of an interview. Veronica and Annie interviewed Jake extensively, and he told some of the stories about him getting started in the rock business.
He does tell the story of his first time mining Biggs and how he got directed to that. This piece here is a Fuller.
Yes, I'm not sure. It's probably Deschutes.
We think it's Deschutes, but I think that there might be some people watching here that can confirm that for us. We threw this in because it is so similar to Biggs and yet is often confused for Biggs.
Right.
This is Deschutes jasper. The only piece. There's one more piece of Biggs for you. This is some of the later material that was mined. It is the other half of number 3.
After Jake left the Biggs area and stopped mining that, for the next couple of years, he mined petrified wood, and the area where the petrified wood came from was on the other side of a river, and the wood was buried upright. So you went along the surface until you found a trunk going straight down in the ground, and then you mined it until you found a crack where you could get a log off or a section off. But these sections of petrified wood were often quite large and very heavy, and there was a problem getting them back over the river. So Jake devised a way to get them to his truck. He strung a cable across the river up to the cliff where the petrified wood was. He built a saddle and attached it to the cable. So he would set this log in this saddle on the cable on one side of the river. Then he would go down, take a boat across the river, get in his truck, and then hook up the cable to the back of his pickup truck and drive forward. This would then raise the petrified wood of the saddle up on the cable, and it would slide down across the river to where his truck was. However, you had to back up the truck real quickly, just in time, so that the wood would land in the bank and not smash the back of his truck. And that's the way a lot of the petrified wood was removed from that area.
Mining rigging.
Yes.
Well, the next section we have to talk about that Jake mined is Bruno Jasper. Would you like to start with that location map?
Okay. Bruno Jasper is in a very remote area. It is, here is Bruno, Idaho. This is southern Idaho, maybe about in the middle of the state. And this is the Bruno River. And it forms a very deep canyon along the river. You can see how dark this looks here. And it's, I don't know what the actual drop off is, but and you can get here several ways. Most people come in from the eastern side, and you have to go across some government land that's used for testing, air testing, bombing, and etc. Sometimes you can't get across there. And take these old dirt roads down the canyon here. It's a very long ways in, and you can come in from the east as well, but that's even worse, I guess. Here is a couple of close-ups. The road comes in and follows this canyon down to the river. And here you can actually, on this close-up, you can actually see some of the workings, various workings. Have been workings all over here. And the road actually comes down here, and there's a bridge. This is the bridge where you can get across the river and then go to the west. Bruno Jasper is recognized as one of the best fine jaspers. That's largely because the pattern, the overlapping oval pattern that I talked about a little bit last week and the week before, is so prominent. The jasper itself, either has the egg pattern or nothing else. The only other, some of the other fine jaspers that are somewhat similar are the Christine Marie Morrisonite, which has this type of pattern or nothing else. And some of the imperial jaspers show this pattern with nothing else. Unlike most of the Morrisonite or Willow Creek or Blue Mountain, there's usually other patterns present, and it's not as prominent. So the egg pattern, or this concentric oval pattern, is best known in the Bruno jasper. The Bruno jasper was mainly produced by three people. Gene Anthus, Gerald Scarrow, and Jake are the three miners that have produced most of the Bruno Jasper that's in the world today. But there's other people have worked there as well, and there's a rather unusual circumstance that has occurred with the claims there. Originally, there were 5 claims owned by 5 different people, and they all got to be fighting with each other about where the claims were and who could dig where, and it went to court. And all these people are yelling in the court about what their rights were, and the judge slammed his gavel down on the counter and said, "Now look here, all you guys. There's 5 claims. All 5 of you own equal amounts of all 5 claims. You can all work wherever you want." So this created a situation of the ground under all 5 claims being owned by a lot of people. And anybody could go there and dig anywhere they wanted to. It also resulted in a situation where many people owned part of it. Some of the owners said, "Well, hell, I'll sell you half of my interest in the Bruno Jasper." Well, that person got half of his 1/5 or whatever, but still had the same mining rights as everybody else. So there was a little study done at one time on the 5 claims where they found that there was about 100 owners. And any one of those people could go out and dig as long as they weren't interfering with anybody else. Jake bought about a 25% interest. I think he bought Ed Brandt's interest in the Bruno. And moved out there and started mining. Now, Jake has spent most of his life living outside, and Bruno was one place that he really loved to live. It is a very deep, steep canyon, so you're somewhat protected from the weather. There are hot springs there, very close to the Jasper deposits. So if you need a hot bath, it's possible to have a hot bath whenever you want it. He also arranged for the hot water to flow past his tent, keep it a little bit warmer. He put in a garden. He grew his food there. Because of the remoteness of the area, obtaining your own food was fairly easy. He could go fishing whenever he wanted, and there were plenty of fish in the river. I believe there occasionally a deer might have went missing from the area as well. So he did not have to go into town quite as often as you would normally to get supplies. The situation there now is one that makes the possibility of more Bruno Jasper being produced very slim. The Bruno River has been designated a wild river and is protected within, I think, a mile of its banks. A lot of the mines, because this canyon is so steep, you can't mine without having rock roll down into the river basin or the very bottom of the river. This is considered a disturbance, a wild river disturbance, and is not allowed, or you would have to remove that somehow. And so the BLM has gotten the miners together, the ones that were left, Gerald Scarrow and Gene Anthus and a few others, and said, we want to nullify these claims or not allow any work unless you guys can put up a $400,000 bond. Now, there isn't a Bruno miner who's ever seen $400,000. So they agreed to just give up the claims. And that's kind of the way the situation sits there now. So for the last, 20 years or so, the Bruno jasper has been getting rarer and rarer. There hasn't been any new material produced for a long time. How are we doing here?
We're on number 38. This is a piece of black Bruno. That's something you haven't mentioned.
Yeah, there is some color variation in the Bruno, not as much as some of the other jaspers, but there's what's called black Bruno, and it's actually quite dark and usually has light tan eggs.
Some
there's some
olivey
that's
green.
a little bit green occasionally.
Did the black Bruno come from a certain area on the claim? Do you know, Jean?
That I don't know for sure.
Number 40 is a pair for $160. So Jake, oh, go ahead.
Jake lived outside most of his life and was always concerned about the expenses of living, because he did not have any source of income other than the rock he sold. So, of course, he was very careful with what he spent. And I'm just telling a little story about how he kept his expenses down. And Jake drove his truck for about 20 years without having a driver's license. And he rationalized this, of course, because almost all the driving that Jake did was on dirt roads in the wilderness. He didn't drive on the highways hardly at all. And so why should he pay for highway construction when he wasn't using them?
Hey, Jean, Philip wants to know if blasting was used at Bruno.
Yes, quite often. I suppose, Gene Anthus also lived out there for a large part of his life, and built a little cabin on the side of the cliff, and probably has mined more Bruno than anybody else. There is a after the BLM put the $400,000 debt or bond in place for anybody mining there, and Gerald and Gene Anthus agreed to give up the claims. There was a video made by them about mining Bruno and their experience there. And that video, if I'm not mistaken, is available on the BLM website?
On YouTube.
It's on YouTube.
On YouTube.
So
Okay, there's...
the next thing that we want to talk about is egg formation.
Yes.
Yes.
I have mentioned in the past presentations this rather unique form, and I wanted to save until we had Bruno in front of us to talk a little bit more about the form and try and explain it a little bit. And I have one here, which I have posted before.
43?
And this pattern that you see in here, which is described as an overlapping oval pattern, which creates the visual illusion of depth. When you see this flat surface and these oval shapes over the top of one another, they tend to look overlapping, and you sense a feeling of depth in the stone, which is not there. This form is a very unique form, and it's fairly rare in nature. It is not concentric. By that I mean if you have an oval, it's not on top of another one. That form, that line that you see, is one continuous line through the rock. If you look here, or you take any one of these, it is possible to take a point in the center of the rock and travel to the outside of the rock and never cross a line. That's a little bit hard to understand or to accept, but that's because this line is a record of an event associated with the formation of the jasper. Here's another one. You can see these continuing oval shapes, but in this case, you can see the opening here. So you can move from here, even on this surface, and out over here, where it looks like you're opposite or something separating you there, but you can move there with and not cross the line. So in this, even that stone, it is possible, if you have the whole thing,
This one has it too.
to move from the center of the piece to the outside and never cross that line. That line represents an event, something to do with the form of the jasper itself. Records of events like this are rare, but they exist in other parts in nature. If you look at the frost on a window, for example, and you see this pattern of crystals, you can see the pattern of water turning from a liquid to a solid. So that's it. The pattern that you see is a record of an event of that happening. This type of formation, we've explained, occurs in all the other what we call fine jaspers, so the morrisonite,
Royal Imperial,
Blue Mountain,
Heart Mountain,
and there's several others. Those are the 5 that have been mined extensively, but there's many others. Heart Mountain has never been mined, but it is a similar type of jaspers which exhibits this same form. Now, any one of those jaspers may have this form, but they may have all kinds of other things that are visible as well. Morrisonite, for example, especially has all kinds of different things that are going on.
All right, next we have Rocky Butte. We have this location map.
Okay, I showed this last week, and you can see here's Sucker Creek Canyon. There's a nice campground there for those rock hunters that want to go. Here is Idaho and here's Oregon. And here's a little blow up of this particular area here. And this is the Oahe jasper, which we talked about with Dale Hewitt. where he mined that. You can see the north-south direction of the vein where it was mined. And the Rocky Butte is right over here, and we have a better picture.
Oh, kind of
Better picture here. Here's the road into the Rocky Butte. This is the Rocky Butte claim, and it's a little hard to see, but you can see the tailings from down here all working this way. And this little workings up here is the Blue Mustang claim, which belongs to the gem shop. And it borders the Rocky Butte claim here. So the Rocky Butte claim sits like this, and the Blue Mustang claim sits to the north here.
Rocky Butte.
Jake? In the early 70s, Jake, of course, heard about all the jasper being mined at Oahe, and went out there prospecting, and he found Rocky Butte. He found it, put a claim on it, and was the original miner of the rock.
He named it even.
He named it even. And do you have a story about that?
Yeah, we asked him about, how did you come up with the name? And he said, well, I looked at a map and I was looking for something short and catchy, and there was a Rocky Butte on the map, even though it wasn't where my mine was. I was like, well, that's a catchy name. I'll name this rock Rocky Butte Picture Jasper. And everyone who sees Rocky Butte on the map will go there instead of my claim.
I want to say a little bit about Jake's mining philosophy. Since Jake lived off of his mining, he was always very concerned about the rock that he mined and if it would be saleable. He never brought any crap out from the mines. Everything that he mined was checked. It was always good material. It was graded well, and it was all chipped to show the quality of the rock that was there. This is especially meaningful in terms of the Rocky Butte jasper, because the Rocky Butte jasper deposit is extensive. There's hundreds of tons of jasper there, but not very much really good jasper. And not that these pieces that we have are exceptionally good. They weren't mined by Jake. But he was insistent in his mining activity of producing only good rock. And at this time, he was mining both Bruno and Rocky Butte, and he would spend the summer mining Rocky Butte, and the winters then he would spend in Bruno Canyon mining the Bruno.
On to Morrisonite. How about those pictures up there?
Oh, yes, we're talking about pictures.
So that top picture is over here. Yeah, Annie. Yeah, Jean. Oh, you want to talk about this? We already showed
Jake,
these.
of course, has a sense of humor, and he we'll show you some other pictures later. But here's a picture of him playing with the excavator and his pickup truck. And then I don't know why we have this next picture in here, but it has to do with duct tape. When you're mining, you always have to have duct tape around just in case. And he needed duct tape over one of his eyes, and I needed it on the back of my shirt. It's just an interesting picture.
These pictures over here are of Morrisonite, but our next section is on Morrisonite.
Wow.
This top one is a pretty well used picture by the gem shop. That's a view from the Jake's Place claim at the end of the turnabout on the road, looking down at the Snake River Canyon. And below that is the Big Hole 1 or Jake's Place claim.
Right.
I'm not sure which one it was in that picture.
The picture that you looked at just above was taken from right over here. So this shows the workings from above, and this is where most of the morrisonite has been produced. In about 1975, Tom Caldwell came to Jake and asked him if Jake would help him start mining the morrisonite. Tom Caldwell's father bought the Big Hole claim from, I believe, Ed Brandt, and bought it so that his son, Tom Caldwell, would have a place to work and something to do, since he didn't have a job. So Jake agreed, and Tom Caldwell had a loader, and Jake had a loader. They took both machines out there. They had a compressor and a drill, and they started taking off the top overburden of the area. And this is what this work for these 2 years created most of the slide that you'll see in some of the other pictures. While they were out there for an extensive period of time, they decided, well, this is so remote that we have to have a place to live out here. So the 2 cabins that are on the saddle, Tom Caldwell and Jake built. Can we go to those pictures?
1 second.
There are 3 cabins in the morrisonite area, the 2 that are on the ridge, and one that I built down on the Christine Marie.
So these 2 are on top of the ridge, and there's the old Scout that you used to drive up and down.
Right, so these 2, the one on the left, Tom Caldwell built, and the one on the right, Jake built. And these were built in 1975 or 76, just before the Federal Land Policy and Management Act was passed by Congress. The picture on the left is taken from the canyon rim, and you can see the 2 cabins kind of up there, and then the road goes on up over the hill, and 4 switchbacks down the road is where the mine is.
My truck
Or the
is
Jake's
driving
Place.
up that road, and that's probably one of the scariest roads I've ever driven.
Yeah, it's definitely
It's
a
not easy.
4-wheel drive road. Okay, gotta get to my notes.
Number 72 is 150. Beautiful streamers in this piece.
So the original workings, Jake and Tom Caldwell drilled and shot the whole top of the morrisonite deposit off during those 2 years. Then Jake left and went back to Rocky Butte, and Tom Caldwell continued to work for a while. There was a sort of the mining in morrisonite is very, very difficult because it's a very steep and all the rock is loose. The canyons, I believe, are being pulled apart, and this causes rock slides and cracking in the rocks, which slide very easily. Tom Caldwell had an unfortunate incident. He was working with his loader, and there was a rock slide where he almost got buried. And soon after that, he left and said, I don't want to do this anymore. About 10 years later, Jake leased the Big Hole claim from Tom Caldwell's wife. Jake and I moved into the Morrisonite area at about the same time in 1986. I was there to work on the Christine Marie for Larry Butler. Larry Butler was a person who lived in Minnesota and had acquired one half of the Christine Marie claim and the Amy Ellen claim from Gene Anthus. So I was there to work on the Christine Marie, and Jake was there to get started on the old Big Hole claim. We lived in the upper cabins. I actually lived in Jake's cabin, and Jake lived in Tom Caldwell's cabin. And we were there doing our own thing, but working together. There were originally 5 claims in the Morrisonite area. The Amy Ellen and Christine Marie are the ones furthest down into the canyon. And the Big Hole 2, and Lacey claim were on top. The claim situation, or the situation of Morrisonite is legally is very complicated, and if you want to know more about that, I would view our previous Morrisonite post that we did in the spring, where all of that is explained in some detail. So Jake worked for 6 or 7 years in the Big Hole claim, and while I was building the road down to the Christine Marie and working on the Christine Marie claim, it became apparent to me that I would have to live closer to where I wanted to work. And so I built a small cabin. We call them cabins. They really aren't cabins. They're lean-tos down on the Christine Marie claim. It took me 2 years to build a road down there that was drivable by the Scout. But then I after I had the cabin built, then I moved down there and lived down below.
So when did you and Jake start mining together?
Okay, I'm going to show my cabin first, and then I'll answer that.
Okay. Jean's cabin is there.
2 pictures there. One is the cabin
At Christine Marie.
At Christine Marie, and then the next picture is the view from the front door.
That's the view you wake up to and go to bed to?
Yep.
It's a pretty nice place to live. What about this other one? Can we show this picture real quick?
Yeah, okay.
That is Jake's tent.
That's Jake's tent, one of Jake's tents. I'd like you to note the road sign. Of course, these are all 4-wheel drive roads, but Jake liked to
name his roads.
Name his roads. So he put up a road sign that says Jasper Lane, and this is actually a juncture. The road that goes to the right, which is just a little bit off, is called River Lane, and that's the road that goes down to the river.
A little Jake humor in that.
Yes. In the early 90s, there was a man named Stuart Porteous, and he had it in his mind that he wanted to own all of the Morrisonite. So he bought Larry Butler's interest, which had half of the Christine Marie claim and the Amy Ellen claim. Then, while we were mining, Jake went to Tom Caldwell's wife, Lisa, I think her name was, and tried to make some arrangements where he could buy the claim from her. However, Stuart Porteous went ahead of him and bought it from her before he had a chance to make final arrangements. So Stuart Porteous now owned the Big Hole claim and half the Christine Marie and the Amy Ellen. I owned the other half of the Christine Marie and the Veronica Lee and the Lenora Jane, which were renames of the abandoned two other claims, which don't have a lot on them. At this point, I was having problems with my eyes, and I did not know whether I could be doing any mining for very much longer. And so I made a deal with a Stuart Porteous. It was a 4-year contract. Jake, at this time, had lost his lease, but the validity of the claim was in question. So the Big Hole claim, because of Tom Caldwell's death, was filed over twice. The same ground was filed over as the Meadowlark claim, and it was filed over as the Jake's Place claim. I filed over as the Jake's Place claim for Jake to work there. In my contract to work for 4 years, I decided to make a contract with Stuart Porteous, and I worked for 4 years under that contract. 2 years during that time, I could work on the Jake's Place claim, and Stuart got 25% of the rock. And 2 years more, I worked down on the Christine Marie. So for those 4 years, Jake and I worked together. We worked 2 years up on top, and we worked 2 years in the Christine Marie. I think it was 95. I think it was 1995 that the Jake's Place Big Hole claim became all of Stuart's. And then Stuart actually hired 2 people to mine it for him. 1 year he hired David Penny, and Dave Penny came in and they mined it for a month. And all of the rock produced from that mining operation went to Stuart. The next year, Jake and I are working down on the Christine Marie, and they're working up on the. Bill Tallman was hired to dig the rock, so he came in and dug it. And even though it upset Stuart Porteous somewhat, Bill Tallman got some of the rock. He didn't get all of the rock, but he got some of the rock that was mined. So the rock that was produced by that mining operation went to Bill Tallman and to Stuart Porteous. The final year of my contract with Stuart Porteous was 1996, and Jake and I worked down on the Christine Marie in September of that year, and there has been no mining with equipment in the Morrisonite area since. The picture of the tent, Jake's tent that we just looked at, was where he was living while we were working on the Christine Marie claim.
That's the same kind of tent that he
Yes, it
put out
might be
that
the same one.
Bruno, right? He talked about putting a tent in a tent to insulate it with his firewood in the wall. Living in a tent and wintering it. Bruno, that story told by Jake can be found on the video that Annie produced that is now on our YouTube station.
Jake, on the Christine Marie, Jake worked in two main areas. One was called the Lower Cliff area, and the other one was called the Upper Cliff area. The Upper Cliff area had a lot of green and red together, and the Lower Cliff area was, and I think there's one piece here from the Lower Cliff area. Was close enough that I could actually get my compressor hose to the area so that it could be drilled and worked with dynamite. Let's see. We got that one yet? Yeah.
What one are you talking about?
This is a piece from the Lower Cliff area. I think it's the only one here.
Number 87 is from the Lower Cliff area. Interesting different colors. It's a little more muted.
Yeah, the veins in the Lower Cliff area were a little straighter. They weren't quite as wide, but and some of it was kind of scenic as well.
So, tell me more about Jake. Didn't he have a certain coffee cup you liked?
Oh, I'm going to mention that a little later.
Okay. How about now?
Well, I wanted to, you want to show this picture later, but this is a picture of Jake at the Lower Cliff area on the Morrisonite claim. And I think he uses a similar picture on his little business card.
Tell me a story about Jake, Jean.
All right.
What about him going barefoot for a year?
We didn't talk about that?
No.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Jake liked living by himself out in the wilderness, and often and he liked I don't know, the Indian lure. So he was always wondering why we're running around in boots all the time. And he thought, well, the Indians ran around barefoot. I'm going to try it. So he went a whole summer without, and even mind Bruno, with no boots or no shoes, barefoot. And he described to me what happens. Your foot develops thick skin, about a half-inch thick. And you just run around and you feel so good. How did he describe it to you?
He said it was freeing. said it was like he felt more connected to Earth, and he felt healthier, that he wasn't literally tied down. You didn't have to think about where your shoes are or if your socks matched. Which I'm sure doesn't pass Jake's mind much.
What about him rescuing you with your dozer?
I mean, I say that he taught me everything I know about mining. Whenever I would have a problem or something, he would offer solutions. And the mining of morrisonite is very difficult and dangerous. And so it teaches you a lot of things pretty quick. We would, when we were living in the cabins up above, he'd be working all day in his mine or in the Big Hole mine, and I'd be working all day on the road or down below in the Christine Marine, come back, and we often spent evenings together talking about things.
You want to start your tribute to Jake? We're just going to show these two items later. So Annie can do a little more scan while you're talking about that. And then we'll go to the rough.
I have often heard Jake described in unusual ways. I've heard him described as an odd duck, you know, always living out in the wilderness and digging rocks and not coming into town except when he had to. But in these conversations that I've had with Jake after mining all day around a campfire, if somebody came to you and said, "Would you work for me? I got a job for you. I want you to sit in this chair and watch that view over there. And I'm going to pay you $100 an hour to do that." Now, would you take that job? Most people would just sort of jump at that job. Jake would not. He would not work for that person, and he would not accept any money for sitting in a chair watching somebody. Because Jake would not work for anybody unless he could be convinced that his work would pay his salary plus provide benefit to his employer. That kind of attitude or moral position is not seen very much today, I don't think. Unfortunately, Jake got me hooked on coffee mining. If we're mining, you got to have lots of coffee, and so when Jake and I were working together, we'd have coffee in the morning. And of course, you had to make enough coffee so that you could have coffee at 10:30 in the middle of the morning when you took your coffee break. And then if there was any left over, of course, you had it for noon. Or sometimes you made coffee at noon and so you could have a little at 3:30. And then in the evening, of course, you made another pot of coffee so you could have coffee with your supper. And you had to have enough coffee so that you had a little quick coffee in the morning, so that you could have it right away in the morning. So, whatever I'm mining, I had this coffee craving all the time. Jake had this coffee cup, and it was designed so that it had a great big round bottom and got real narrow at the top, so it had a little tiny opening, you know, just 2 inches across the top, and he'd have coffee in that in the evening, and it was made that way to keep the coffee warm, but many times when we were sitting around a campfire discussing one thing or another, you know, it just seemed that he was getting really talkative or whatever, and sipping his coffee. But then one day I walked by his coffee cup and looked down in there, and it wasn't brown, it was red. That's because it wasn't coffee at all. It was wine. So in the evening, excuse me a second, Jake would quite often sometimes have a little sip of wine.
He said that's when the names came to him for the picture Jaspers. And a little wine helped. We have two more items tonight.
I'm not done.
Okay. Sorry.
One time Jake and I are sitting around a campfire, and he's got his red coffee cup with his red liquid in it, and he's feeling pretty good. And we're discussing some moral dilemma. And so we started talking about the Bible and what it said. And he said to me, and I think these are his exact words, if you want to know what's in it, you have to read it. And Jake has read the Bible from cover to cover. And he spent his whole life in a moral sense of producing rock for people. I don't know. I need another drink. I don't know if Jake ever set foot in a church or not, but he has spent most of his life bringing wonderful rock to the lapidary market, and there are literally thousands of people who have a better appreciation of where we live because of him.
Thank you for that, Gene. We have two more items tonight. One, first is number 122. These are 2-pound bags of Morrisonite. These are the same Morrisonite that we offered in our show. We have 16 of these available. If you text number 122, you will be put down for one of them. Number 123 here is $35 a pound. This is Bruno Jasper. It is more of a cabbing grade than a specimen grade because there's not a full nodule in here, but there's still some with some nice patterns that can be found. That material is going for $35 a pound, number 123. That is our last of our items this evening. We want to give a big thank you to Jake for letting us come out and interview him in the spring. We had such a great time, as always, spending time with Jake. His stories, his humor is never going to be forgotten from me. Please join us next week, or not next week, 2 weeks from now. We're breaking for Thanksgiving. I hope everyone enjoys some turkey. And we will see you Thursday, December 3rd, for our Christmas show. We will be featuring some items that our staff has chosen to have in the show, as well as some of the featured artists. We have some buck knives with beautiful inlays by Jake Rankin, and we have some wonderful wire wraps by Jenny Damrow, as well as some pieces from Mike Cook, and some home decor items, and also always something for the collector. So please join us for our Christmas show, December 3rd at 5 o'clock. Hope you all enjoyed our show. Thank you for joining us.